Hello and welcome back to NoBS. We are live. We are talking about some current events, giving you guys the usual live stream, trying to keep this a Sunday thing going here, having a lot of fun. I am, of course, your host, NoBS, aka Brooks. How's everybody doing today? I'm joined, as always, by my good buddy Marcus. How are you doing, pal? I think I might not hear you for a second. Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yeah,
oh yeah. Sorry, I accidentally had that thing muted.
no worries. How you doing?
Doing great. How are
Okay.
you?
No, I'm awesome, man. I was worried for a second. I was like, oh no, technical difficulty. We finally got this thing working. But that's because I was telling you to mute earlier, and then I was like, oh, I forgot to say, don't forget to unmute. Anyway,
Yeah, I had to make sure the whatchamacallit,
you're
because
good.
the ad starts at the beginning of the video. I wanted to skip that and make sure I mute the video,
No
mute the
worries,
stream so
man.
there's no distortion.
Yeah, no worries, man. Welcome back. How's your weekend doing?
My weekend's doing great so far.
Awesome.
Just getting stuff done and feeling great, rewarding myself.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's been a good weekend for me too, but at the same time, it's been a crazy weekend. Like I just saw some really interesting news last night. I want to go over that today for you guys. Checking out the chat too. So if you guys have ideas, stuff you want to talk about, make sure you drop a line in the chat. Let us know. We're talking about whatever you want today. This is just our weekly stream. But to start, let's talk about Atlanta. Atlanta had a crazy story going on. I've working on some videos this morning. I got a couple of videos going here and there. But I think there's plenty to talk about. Essentially, they had this other arrest gone wrong there, and it was a really bad story. And now there was like this Wendy's that got caught on fire. They set this whole Wendy's on fire, which is a restaurant, of course. And yeah, it's been a really, really crazy story. I was watching on the news last night, and I was legit worried because, yeah, it was just like what you call it, like it was like Minneapolis 2.0, you know, it was just all over again. And you could just see how they're going to hustle this and just turn it into another really, really bad thing. And yeah, I mean, I'm just worried. I don't hope it doesn't happen like every time a black person dies, we're going to have all these riots and buildings burned down. Because if that's going to happen every time, I mean, we're going to never end. This is just going to keep going and going. And on top of that, we've got other situations that are still going on. I mean, Minneapolis really hasn't ended. That's still wrapping up, or like, there's still people protesting that. And then there's also this whole Seattle story. Now we got to talk about how Seattle has turned a part of its downtown into a whole separate state, like Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, Chaz is going on, and that's another story. I mean, that's more of a funny story because luckily, I don't think we've had any bad deaths there. There has been some controversy. There has been people kind of getting hurt, getting arrested, or the people there are arresting them. But that's the thing. It's like they won't let the cops in, which is really funny. And then they have their own cop force, which I thought was really interesting. And it was just really a crazy story because after they get their own zone in Seattle, they basically start doing all the things they told us not to do. Like first they build a wall, and they're like, "Oh, I thought you guys said walls are racist, but now you got to build a wall because we want to protect our place." And then the next thing they do is start using their Second Amendment right, and they're all carrying weapons like defending the place, and that's another thing they said that was wrong. And then next it's they're policing their own state, and they're like stopping and frisking people, which is a phrase and a technique that they had always called racist. And it's just a total mess. And I think that Chaz Zone is really, really showing a lot of what's wrong with this whole philosophy. Have you heard much about the Chaz stuff, Marcus?
Indeed, I've been keeping a very close eye on it, and from the way you described it and from the way people have been describing it generally, I'm like, this is a making of a coup d'état. There's no like, what are you talking about? Like, it's right there in your face and you're
Mm-hmm.
not gonna acknowledge it. I mean,
Yeah.
what's wrong with you people?
Yeah, seriously. It's like, and it's so obvious. that it's political. Someone's mentioning in the chat about the election. This is all related. It's not just a coincidence that BLM disappeared ever since 2016, the last election, and now they're doing the same thing they did in 2016 all over again. I mean, people notice that. We could tell there's a political motivation here. It's just obvious that they're seeing that the election's getting close. They're ramping up this whole race baiting, these kinds of riots and fighting. And it's just, I think it goes to show how weak their kind of ideas and platform is, because it's not based on rhyme or reason. They're not having any logic or, oh, we're going to save the country this way or we're going to help people this way. It's like, no, they just want to get power and to get money and to get in control. And that's why they make up stuff and say everything's racist and stuff like that.
Yeah, Chaz is just one giant double standard, and I'm just laughing just watching how they're governing that area. And I'm like, you guys are doing the exact things you called racist or sexist
Hmm.
or what you've been against ever since President Trump got elected. And now here you are doing the same exact things that you didn't like, and yet it no longer becomes a problem.
I know. And it's just the perfect example. Like we have that video series here on the channel where we're like, it's okay when liberals do it. And they like really think that's true. They really think it's okay when they do it, which is just insane. And it's just so much worse because they're so vocal and like against these things like the wall or the Second Amendment or stop and frisk. Those are just the recent examples in Chaz, but there's many others where they'll like say, okay, another example I think from last week was cultural appropriation came up again. That's a thing they always try to attack white people for. They say, oh, you can't wear this costume on Halloween or this or that, and then they go and do it, and they wear those African scarves, and they're kneeling for black people, and they can do it themselves, which
Oh
is
yeah,
just crazy.
yeah. I sent that to you the other day with Ned was covering it. Tyler, I was getting a kick out of him just
Yeah, that's
watching
a
that.
good channel. I think that's a good idea too. If we ever get in touch with him, we should have him on one day because he is funny and he gets the stories really good. And
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
it's like crazy that they'll do that whole thing, and it's like after they said we had appropriated for so long, oh, you can't appropriate this, and then they do it, and then they wear the scarves, and then you got people like Elizabeth Warren who basically said she was a native her whole life. I mean, that's the worst kind of appropriation. She's not just like wearing a costume, she was like legit pretending to be a minority.
yeah. And then she finally got called out. People defended her, and then she was like, "Fine, I'll take a DNA test." Takes a swab and finds out she's 1,024 Native American.
Yeah.
I think I'm more Native American than Elizabeth Warren, to be
Hmm.
honest. But granted, I haven't taken a test personally myself yet. But that's
Yeah.
just because particular privacies would have to be,
Yeah, it's not
yeah,
necessary. It's not for everyone, but I do think it is funny because the worst part, and to bring that story up again, is the fact that Warren still put that test out there herself. Like she thought that was good enough to prove, even though everyone's like, "You're 1/1000th. That's nothing. Like anyone could be 1/1000th. It doesn't even mean anything." I mean, she used that as evidence. She thought she was making a good point, and everyone just laughed at that as they should. Next, let me see some of the chat here.
yeah,
Gonna
I'm looking down at it too.
check them out here. See, thank you guys for chiming in. By the way, awesome audience. It looks like we've got 56
57,
people. That's awesome.
50, 56, 57. That's very good. That's kind of like what we saw last week.
Yeah, and we're getting higher too. Like I think 60 was like our max in these chill streams. So we're going up and up, I think, because this is pretty quick. Appreciate you guys watching, by the way. Make sure you like and subscribe and that stuff too if you're new. But let me get in on these comments. Alex says the Chaz Bono occupied zone. Good pun there. Stupid Squaw from Weedy Toker. Elizabeth says, yeah, I was mad she used Native American to get where she is. She's 90% Native using our benefits. Yeah, I could understand that kind of anger. Mestizo, I think Mestizo says, if Seattle granted sovereignty to Chaz, I wonder what other new territories will pop up. Yeah, and that actually reminds me to back to the Chaz thing. The other part that's really messed up is the city and the state aren't doing much about it. Like they actually had video, the mayor was visiting that autonomous zone, like acting like everything's okay. And we actually just premiered a video on this channel like an hour or so ago about CNN trying to defend it. And CNN was trying to act like nothing's going on. And they had the reporter there. And he was literally saying it was all peaceful while the protesters got in the front of his camera and like ruined his shot. And then I had to censor part of the video too. I don't know if you guys noticed the smiley face in it because I was like trying to cover up all this graffiti in the background. And it was like just really vulgar stuff in the background, basically cursing, saying F the police and stuff like that, Nothing like the end of the world, but it was just funny. They say it's all peaceful and great down there, and then you look at it and it's like graffiti's everywhere, the cities are trashed, everything's boarded up, and the media is trying to defend it. Like that CNN video was totally ridiculous. And then I've seen others do similar things. Like I forgot what it was. I think it was just a random Twitter account I saw earlier today, and they were trying to like post these pictures saying they went to the zone, and they're trying to make it look all great. Like, oh look, they're playing dodgeball. They're having a someone clean up the street. This person is, having a farmers market, like someone's selling fruits or something, and they want it to look like it's peaceful. And then, like I said, the mayor went down there and she's like all mingling it up with it, acting like everything's fine. Like she's just like in the middle of it. She's in denial. She's spending more time like bashing Trump than actually, trying to fix her city. And then the governor is doing the same kind of nothing stance. He's making it political. They're obviously all liberal run there, and they're liberal leaders, and this is what they asked for. And it's like, again, this is kind of what I've said when they talk about shutting down the police too. And I'm just like, yeah, just if you guys want to do that in your area, go for it. It's not going to be good for you. Like I advise against it, but it's their area. So I mean, it's kind of interesting to watch them try and to see it fail because it's giving us that proof that this was a bad idea.
Yep, it is indeed a bad idea. But for me, it's not really about what's the word I'm looking for. It's not about the stability of the particular location. How often do people riot or do bad things over there? But what I'm more worried about over there in terms of that is finance. How are these people going to last
Hmm.
if they are cutting themselves out from the land of opportunity?
Yeah,
So
I know it doesn't
where are
make
you gonna
sense. Like I think, and
where
I
are you gonna
think
get the money?
Yeah, I think that's proof. Like there definitely is something coming in from the outside. Like we've already seen them getting like food deliveries and getting food brought in, like from donors or supporters or whatever. There's a lot of people with interest to keep this kind of liberal dream. It's kind of like a liberal nightmare, really. This kind of nightmare alive. So there's definitely is support who specifically it may be. I mean, there's definitely someone on the outside, and that just kind of reminds you like it's not really autonomous zone. Like they want to say it's autonomous, which to me implies that they can run and live on their own without any outside help. But I think they're taking it maybe a different way. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, like you said, they're in the middle of Seattle. Like they're not going to last long without any some kind of support line, some kind of food coming in. That was another part of the story we heard about the homeless people stole all their food right away, and then there's that really funny pictures of their gardens that are just really terrible gardens. They're trying to grow food there now and like start their own thing, but that's not working out either. It's really crazy. And actually I'm going to go ahead and switch to some news here and show you guys some stuff.
And
So
as
this
I
is
stated earlier in your NoBS video,
mhm.
I actually said in the comment section that I actually have some try to sound like a smart aleck as well. I have virtual military experience
Mhm.
off of a game I play, and there's a game I played in particular called Hearts of Iron, where you can learn about the autonomy system and how certain things can end, and it's pretty bad if you tell me.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that like those simulations going wrong. You're saying like kind of giving you a fictional version to see how this will all end. And that's what I don't think they're thinking this through too. Like no one in this situation is thinking it through. This is an article I just pulled up. I thought was funny. They're trying to change it from Chaz to Chop. I don't know why. I guess Chaz does sound pretty lame, but yeah, it's like Capitol Hill occupied protest instead of autonomous zone. I guess that's confusing people. This says this is not autonomous zone. We're not trying to secede from the U.S. He claimed that outsiders called it Chaz. So I think they're trying to reframe it, and I think this goes to show there isn't like a great leadership down there, and it's like a very chaotic. Like we already talked about in another video where Chaz automatically got ruled by this Raz rapper guy who kind of like took it over and took the lead. And then without any other leadership, without the cops around, they can't call the cops on him. So they're kind of just forced into running around and following this guy who's like pretending to be a warlord. And then now they're trying to reframe it. And I think this goes to show they know this is looking bad, like they know that they need to like kind of rewrite the narrative at some point because yeah, it's just a bad look for them. Like they thought it was going to be cool and now these protests are backfiring. And I think that was actually happening even before Chaz too. Like we talked about, Chaz is just a symptom of the greater problem. Like the original incident was Minneapolis kind of started this recent wave and Minneapolis happened and then it spread to all these other cities and then Chaz was like the first spin-off. And I think it's going to show like even before Chaz happened it was like the riots and the protests they went too far and they went too violent and too negative and like tore down too much of the city and it's just like now it's backfiring on them and I think that's where like things like this name change can be suggested and things like that like they know that there's an issue and you know they don't want to kind of end it, so they're reframing it, and I think that's where we're getting to a problem.
Yeah, Chaz or Chop, it don't really matter what you rename the zone. They both sound bad in their own unique character.
hmm Yeah, no, it doesn't sound like it'd make a difference. It's besides the point. Like, yeah, it's like trying to rename, uh, a poop I took this morning. Like, I could rename it. I could call it a pretty princess, but it's still just a hunk of poop. It's like you can't. You could call it what you want, but it's not going to help. And I think the chat is agreeing with a lot of things. Let me get back to the chat for a second. I see someone saying
65, new record.
yeah, we got 65 people. That's awesome. 30 likes already. Very appreciated, guys. The South needs to rise up. I don't know about that one. Mestizo says these anarchists definitely want to break away from America if given an opportunity. Yeah, I think that's true. Like they're trying to reframe it in that article, or someone maybe trying to speak for the zone, but they're trying to leave. I mean, we saw pictures and images like there was that one picture the first time they put up a barrier and it said you're leaving the United States. So if they're trying to claim they're trying to change the narrative now, I mean, I would need more confirmation. I would expect some signs to say some more stuff about Chop instead of Chaz, but like we said, it's all kind of optics now. They're trying to reframe the story to save their hides. I took a huge Chaz this morning. It flushed right away. Yeah, this guy gets what I'm talking about. Lipstick on a pig. They're talking about they're talking about the comparison. Like I was saying, like yeah, you could polish a turd. I think that's the other phrase I was gonna think of is you could polish a turd all day, but it's still a piece of shit. It's still like it's not gonna
Oh
be
yeah,
pretty, and that's what Chaz
that,
is right now.
he definitely must have seen Jeff Dunham if he said a phrase like that. Polish a turd, it's still a turd.
Yeah, I know. And then we got Past Masterden. Sean says, "What's up? What's up, Sean? God bless you. God bless you too, Cyber." Robert in here, and then we got Elizabeth again. This comment is not sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. That warlord Raz is to you. Put some respect on it. Yeah, Raz is the rapper, and I just love that was one of my favorite parts about the first video I got in on this. Like, I just had this great title because I'm like, there's so many funny elements to Chaz where it's like. The title of my video I thought was great because it was like SoundCloud rapper becomes warlord in Seattle's autonomous zone. Like there's just so much going on there. And all of that is true, like factual. Like this guy was a rapper. He was on SoundCloud, which I just think is kind of a goofy thing. Like SoundCloud rappers, it's just like a wannabe rapper, Like that's just where they go a lot of times
Mm.
these days. It used to just be YouTube, and now SoundCloud kind of took some of that hype. But yeah, it's just a ridiculous story. And I think the Raz part of it's fading because what's more interesting now is like the mayor is visiting there. The news is defending it. They're trying to pretend it's a good, peaceful situation when it's not. They're trying to like reframe the story and act like they're not seceding from the union. A lot of kind of backpedaling and reframing and just kind of sad situation. I would not want to be in Seattle right now. I feel bad for anyone that happened to be in that zone or near that zone. Like there's places in there like businesses, there's a police station, there's, lawyers' offices or something. Like a lot of people are getting affected by this.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I would agree. I would not want to go to Seattle either. But the only time I would ever want to go to Seattle is if I wanted to take a trip to Seattle because one of our services from Chicago actually goes all the way to Seattle. But at some point, it splits off,
Hmm.
and one goes to Seattle and the other goes to Portland.
Yeah.
That'd be the only time you ever see me go.
Yeah, because of the train. And then the other thing that actually is a good point to remind me, like they're trying to set up a zone in Portland too. I saw some starting of it. Like I don't know if it got this far as Chaz at all, but when it started to happen with Chaz, I saw Portland and there was like video of people in Portland like grabbing fences and like putting up fences to try to start their own zone, which again is hilarious because I mean, come on. Putting up a border is the first thing that the liberals do. Like they're the people that have been fighting against a border wall for years. They call it racist. They call it offensive. They say that walls don't work. Even they said walls don't work, and then they go and put them
yet,
up right
yet
away.
where did yet where do they live? In gated communities.
I know. Portland is setting it up. I like again. I said I don't know how far that went. If that was successful, I saw the videos of them grabbing fences and whatever they could. But that is certainly funny and ironic. And it's expected. It's the West Coast. They're both very liberal cities on the West Coast, liberal run areas. And it's again, it kind of reminds me of like we are talking about the you know remove the police meme. Like they want to end the police in some of these areas. And, we can disagree, we can make fun, and we'll talk about how it's wrong. But if that's what they want to do, that's their right. Go ahead. Take your police away. Make these autonomous zones. Make your areas whatever you want to do. That's what you voted for. You voted for all these liberals. This is what the people want. That's what they want to do. Go ahead. Because every day they do it, they're proving us right. They're proving us the fact that we need borders. We need the Second Amendment. We need law enforcement. They're also just, in a lot of ways, like I've seen lots of posts saying like, this is all helping Trump now. They thought they were going to like take down Trump or like protest him or like make the other people look bad. But again, like we said, they've gone too far and now Trump is looking better. Like Chaz is going to get Trump reelected.
Now that you mentioned that, and I saw 80 views just now before the number went down, brand
Hmm.
new record.
That's awesome.
And Mark Dice was actually mentioning this the one day. There was a lady in the whole riot, and she was the only one who tried to speak some common sense to the riot. She was like yelling above her lungs, "Stop this! Stop this!
Hmm.
This is what's going to get Trump reelected! Stop this!" And what
Yeah.
do? They keep on doing it.
Yeah, exactly. That's where they're at now. Even some of the leftists realize that. That's why they're trying to reframe it and reconfigure their story, and they think they could save it with this or that. But I think they're beyond saving. Someone in the chat asked, "Who is the co-host?" This is Marcus, our buddy here, good friend of the show. And what else we got going on? We got someone saying, "Who is Johnny?" Someone said they will eventually need police when things go problematic. I don't know who. And then someone says, "I hope they have ventilators in Chad." Someone else mentioned Family Guy. I thought that was pretty funny because there's something else. I've seen this in a few comments too because there is like a episode of Family Guy. I might have to cover this one because it's a little different because this is a really old episode. I can't remember. It was like early seasons of Family Guy, and it was like he sets up his own city in Family Guy. It's like in his house, and he makes it. It's called Pretoria or Petor.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that one.
Yeah, it's called like Pretoria. He makes his own country as a flag. And I remember it like vaguely, but it was like really long ago. Like I forget how early it was. Like it could have been like season 2 or 3 or something.
It was like one of the first. Yeah, it was like one of the first seasons, and the only reason why that episode existed was because Peter wanted to build a pool, but he couldn't make a pool without a permit. And when he went to the mayor's office, he's like, "Why can I not build a pool? I don't have a permit." And they're like, "Your street and your address don't exist." So he's like, "Fine, I'll go on to create my own country."
Yeah, that's a good. Okay, I forgot all that setup. Like I remember the jokes and the little flag, but that yeah, that's good. And that's what's hilarious. Like people keep bringing that up now because it's a lot like Chad, and it's just funny because Family Guy made they made their joke like 20 years ago or something. But before we keep going, shout out to the Angel Munez Variety Show. Thanks for the donation. Really appreciate it. They say the leftist cancel culture has prompted me to binge watch all episodes of Paw Patrol on Sling TV and buy an adult Paw Patrol shirt. I am 30 years old. All right, we got a big Paw Patrol fan here. That's great. Great. Appreciate that super chat again, by the way. But yeah, Paw Patrol was one of those shows that got under fire recently. That's worth bringing up again because, yeah, it goes along with this whole story because we're talking about these protest demonstrations, the autonomous zone. It's all sparked by Minneapolis. Of course, the tragic uh, failed arrest gone wrong that happened there. Terrible story. No one's defending that, but it did spark a lot of chaos, and it didn't need to. It was caused by race baiting in the media and people overhyping it and just getting too excited about something that was just a one bad case. It was a one off. And yeah, now we're in this state where there's an autonomous zone in Seattle. Portland tried to start one. Atlanta was on fire last night. They had a whole incident of their own. And then, yeah, now we're talking about media. So this super chat was about Paw Patrol, which, again, is a cartoon show for kids. And they're coming after it because one of the characters is a dog that's a cop. And then it's one of those shows. It has like people from the city. Like one of the dogs is a construction worker, one of the dogs is a firefighter, one of them is a cop. And before most people didn't think, oh, cop is going to be controversial. I don't really see how it is still controversial. The only reason it is because of all this liberal race baiting and them trying to pretend the cops are all evil. And that's the worst part is that these guys are really the heroes. They're trying to save us all. They're trying to protect us and uphold the law. And now they're vilified and they're coming after the most innocent shows like Paw Patrol. And then they're coming after other stuff like anything with the cop is under fire. Like they've canceled the show Cops, which was a long-running cop show, a reality show, and then they canceled Live PD, which this one is super messed up because Live PD was still highly successful. Like they were still getting a lot of ratings. It was a popular show. It wasn't that old, like a few years into its career, and they got canceled prematurely because of all this BLM anti-cop stuff. And then now they're turning on kids shows like Paw Patrol. I actually just made another video. This will be coming up on one of the channels, guys. We're talking about Spider-Man again. Spider-Man came up again because they wanted to make. There's a new Spider-Man spin-off, and they're attacking it because he helps the cops. And he's helping the cops too much. So if you're a hoop, superheroes are under attack because they work with the cops and get criminals arrested. It's a really crazy world we're living in. It's a really dark time, but it is fun to watch. I mean, we got a lot of good content here. We're getting a lot of stuff to talk about. And yeah, what do you think about all that, Marcus? Have you heard about the Paw Patrol stuff at all?
Well, I've seen brief pictures of Paw Patrol, but watching the general cancellation of all the cop shows is what really saddened me because there was, well, cops in particular, that was a little staple of a childhood memory.
Mm-hmm,
Uh,
mm-hmm. That
I
was a
remember,
classic show. It's been on 30 years. I mean, most of our lives, it's like, oh, yeah, I remember it too for the same reasons. Like, it was never like, that was the thing that I didn't get about the cops cancel because They acted like it glorified the cops, and I never saw it that way. Like, I just saw Cops. Cops is one of those shows that people would watch because the arrests were really crazy, and you'd see like these crazy criminals going off, you know? Like, it was never really about,
Yeah.
oh, the cops are heroes and they're the best.
Yeah, I mean, like, from what I can tell you, I mean, like I said, it's a childhood staple. My my dad and I would watch the show when I was like, I don't remember if I was like 6 or 7 years old at the time, but we would turn the TV on as Jerry Springer was coming to an end, and after Jerry Springer came the show Cops, and
Yeah.
yeah, we always watched it.
So good, yeah. And that's actually what I was thinking too. It reminds me of a Jerry Springer or like a Maury show because it's like a daytime show and you just would watch it for the drama and you'd see these people freaking out or getting arrested or something. Like Cops falls into that. It's definitely a different premise. Like it's not a talk show, of course, but it's similar like to like a Maury. Like people watch Maury because there's going to be, a pregnancy paternity test and then they freak out when they figure out who the dad is. And then on Cops, it was like, oh, there's this robbery, and then they freak out when they try to arrest him. So it was never really about like glorifying them, in my opinion. I always saw it as just a fun, crazy show, sometimes dark and sad too, because there's criminals and bad things happening. And yeah, the other thing worth mentioning is, yeah, this cancel culture, it's really running amok. Like someone else is mentioning something here about the Gone with the Wind side of this, and then I'll get to this super chat. Thank you, Josh. But well, let me talk about Gone with the Wind because that was another angle, and there was actually two related cancellations for that. First, we covered how Gone with the Wind was pulled from HBO Max, and this is like a classic movie that's been around forever. Everyone's seen it, and it's like the most historic, long, like popular movie from the past. And they pull it off HBO Max because it had to do with slavery, and it's just like totally ridiculous. And then the next step and the next story was a video I think we came out with yesterday. It was about this band called Lady Antebellum, and they had that name. And antebellum is kind of like a phrase having to do with before the Civil War. So that got them in trouble, and they had to change their name. And now it's just like, yeah, anything to do with the Civil War. And this kind of the next step of that is the statue stuff we've been seeing. Statues have been getting pulled down across the country, and that's super messed up too. Like you could say what you want about the people and the statues and the racism. Like I understand there's going to be some statues that might be offensive now, but you don't go and just tear them down on your own. Like that's a crime. Like if they really want this stuff removed, if they're really justified and they have a good story, they would just go to the government or whatever it is, do it the official way, you know?
Yeah, and and it's supposed to be like whatchamacallit, it's supposed to be like a symbol of history. Even if it's offensive, you can't really erase history because
Hmm.
history is there for a reason. It's so we don't repeat
Yeah, for sure. And when
whatever
you just
happened.
try to erase it, it makes you look like these like Big Brother book burners. It also makes you more likely to repeat your history, which is another bad thing you don't want to do. And then yeah, let me get to this next super chat. Really appreciate it, Josh. Remember when they said orcs were racist? Funny how these rioters and looters are acting like orcs with all their burning and pillaging orcs. So this guy likes this story. Orcs are, of course, the kind of villain from Lord of the Rings. And that was a story that came up. I guess it was like a month or two ago. I remember this story. I don't think we had a video about it, but yeah, it was a really funny story saying the orcs were racist, and that was like trying to go after Lord of the Rings. And then now I think I could see this guy's comparison too, because yeah, these people in these autonomous zones and in these riots and in these crazy stories, like they're acting like, you know, wild people. They're wild creatures, like savages. Like I don't want to say it too hard, like because I know that could sound a little like racist or something. But yeah, it's true. It's they're not acting civilized, and that's the thing I said too when I talked about the statues in a previous video. Like I was saying, like you can't just tear down statues. That's not like we're in a society. We're in a civilization. You don't just go and tear down someone's house because you're mad at them or tear down a statue. Like you got to go through the proper channels. You call the cops, you make a petition to the city. Like there's proper ways to remove a statue. Like I'm not totally against the statue removing. Like I kind of am against it. I'm not really for taking all these things down. But the main point is for now is you can't just go in the streets and tear them down on your own.
Right, exactly. It's it's vandalism, and again, you're kind of trying to erase history, and history will repeat itself if you're
Hmm.
gonna suppress it.
Yeah, and it's also just like they don't understand the history, and a lot of times they're just being destructive, and they want to use this excuse of racism. Like racism is their excuse, and they use these things as their justification because we know it's not always the case. Like, for example, back to the statue vandalism, like this has been rampant across the country. And I swear, like half the time, it's not even a racist statue, it's just a statue. And like for example, like Christopher Columbus, a lot of people they paint him really wrong, but they try to act like he killed all the natives or something, but that's not the case at all. Like his story is much more nuanced. Now, the ones I could see that being much more controversial are like there's some of those Confederate statues and the Southern slaveholders that might have had statues. Like those people legitimately had those like kinds of darker past. But Christopher Columbus going down is like very gray area to me. Like I'm not really on board with the whole he was a genocider and everything. Like I think that's a big misrepresentation. And then on top
Oh
of
yeah.
that, that's not even like the worst one. Like the worst ones I've seen were like some statues they've teared down were like monuments to anti-slavery people. Like there was this one guy, I can't remember the name, but it was like an abolitionist and he was like trying to end slavery like 30 years before it was even made a law. And they tore down his statue just cuz they were going around taking down every statue. And then there was this other memorial they went after and like graffiti and like messed up and it was like a black soldier memorial. Like it was like for this like platoon of black soldiers from whichever war. And it just goes to show like they're just destructive. Like they just want to do things that they want to do. They hate white people a lot of times. Like they'll have like these loose justifications, but at the end of the day it's just attacking European descendants, white people, Americans, our history, and just trying to make that all go away.
Yeah. And I'll be right back momentarily.
Sure.
And I'll let you know as soon as I come back.
Yeah, man, take your time. I'll be reading the
Right.
chat. I'll be talking to you guys. Let's see what else is going on. Josh says orcs again. Great point. Thanks for that chat. A lot of conquerors erased the history of people they slaughtered. If only they had a recent one to compare them to. Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of book burning and a lot of radical fascists, dictators will try to, rewrite the history. They come in, they take over, they take away all the books and then make their own stories. It's just part of that same thing. And that's why it's so messed up. It's just like they're afraid of the history. They don't want people to know what really happened. And since we already know how kind of biased and off their stories are, like their interpretations of, say, Columbus, or how they'll say all America is racist, all cops are violent criminals, like murderers. Like we could already see how biased their stories are. Now, just imagine how bad that would get if we let them control everything. I mean, they're already trying to make these stories up and make things look really bad. So if they actually had the power, if they actually were in charge more, like it would just get even worse. It's really crazy. It's really bad and it needs to stop. So I think we are getting close. We are going to be wrapping soon, but we got a good amount of viewers and a good amount of chats. A really good show so far. So I appreciate everyone showing up. I'm glad we got to 80 people at one point. I see it's about 65 now. 45 likes is a great start. I appreciate that, guys. Someone says F Taylor Swift. F Taylor Swift. That's a good point.
Boy.
Well,
And I'm
Marcus is back. Taylor Swift and Billie Eilish both have become the most toxic virtue signalers. Yeah, that's a great point, and that's a good kind of fresher topic. We've talked about Taylor a few times. She used to be not so bad. Like she tried to stay out of politics for a minute, but then she also overcompensated, and now like the last year, she's like super biased and like, oh, BLM, oh, SJWs, like pro alphabet. And I've seen a lot of that from Billie Eilish too. She's the younger, newer singer, And every time I see it, it's just two things. It's first, they don't know what they're talking about. And then second, it's just like, who cares what celebrities have to think, you know?
Yeah, when I heard about Taylor Swift originally, I was like, yeah, you go, girl. You go. You stay neutral. And then suddenly she starts blue pilling, and I'm like, Taylor, what are you doing, girl?
I know. I know. She was so much better off. And it's just, to me, any celebrity that almost just doesn't get political, like, I'd rather just not hear anything. Like, I don't even, like, sometimes I get a little excited when a celebrity gets conservative or says something pro Trump. But the only reason really is it's not because I super care. It's just like nowadays that's a surprise. It's like when you see someone stepping out and like saying something pro Trump, like that's worth noting just because they're going against their whole industry and they're like kind of risking their jobs sometimes. Not like I would feel sorry for them. Usually they're already millionaires. Usually the ones going pro Trump are like really highly established and they don't have anything to worry about. But still, that's the only reason that's worth noting. In general, it's like who cares what celebrities have to think? And I think that's actually a good point to bring up the whole Chappelle stand up. Chappelle had a new stand up come out a couple of nights ago on Thursday. We did a video about it. It was a lot of fun to watch. He definitely said some things like I said in my video, you know, you can agree and disagree. Like he took a very left wing stance and supported a lot of what was going on. He was dedicating the whole thing to George Floyd. And you know he kind of like encouraged the rioters and said they're doing the right thing, kind of stuff like that. That we of course probably don't agree with, because you know we're not for all this chaos and rioting. And even if you get it down to that original case, like that arrest gone wrong, it certainly didn't have like proven racism. It was just a really bad situation where someone's resisting arrest, cops couldn't get them down. It turned into a very messy thing. But the point is, Chappelle's show brought this up. I call him Chappelle's show sometimes on accident. Dave Chappelle brought it up. He is a great comic. And yeah, you know he's good because even if you would disagree with him, I still enjoy his show, you know?
Yeah, I enjoyed watching Dave Chappelle. Whether if I agree with him politically or not, he's a comedian and he certainly made me laugh a few times. So I'll give him the mad respect of that.
For sure. And I think that's a great to point out because something I didn't get to in the video about this was the fact that Candace Owens responded. Like Candace Owens was mentioned in the Chappelle stand up and he kind of ripped on her pretty good. Like he was calling her like some bad names and stuff. And he was just disagreeing with her, which is another thing like we would probably disagree on because, you know, we did a video about Candace and what she said about the Minneapolis story. And, you know, she made some great points. She brought up the guy's past and pointed out how he shouldn't be made into a hero, all that stuff. And, you know, Chappelle obviously disagreed. He goofed on Candace real hard. And the best part about that was when I saw Candace's reaction, it was pretty good because she tweeted a little something. She didn't say much. She didn't like get defensive or get angry. All she said was, "Oh, I saw a lot of people sending me the clip from Chappelle's stand up." And she's like, unlike many leftists out there, I could take a joke. I like to laugh, and I thought it was great. So she just took it in stride. You know, she just took it and was like, he's a comedian. I'm a political person. We disagree, but I'm not going to get angry. She's not going to like call him out because it's like, yeah, it's almost like an honor to get mentioned. It's like, you know, she got mentioned in a Chappelle stand up. And even if he goofs on her, I mean, that's kind of like an honor. You know, it's showing how big she's gotten.
Yeah, even if someone tried to take a jab at me, I mean, granted, I'm not the biggest fan of being called out in a negative tone, but just the idea of being acknowledged, I mean, yeah, it does give you the sense of recognition. And I'm
Hmm.
sure you can relate to that in
Yeah.
certain cases.
Yeah, for sure. And that was something I said in my video. I was like saying, yeah, like when you're on our side and you like comics and different jokes, like you don't always get offended if someone mentions you. Like I've been mentioned, I've had videos made about me here or there. And it's like, if it's a channel I think that's funny, I just roll with it. I'm like, oh, good job. Like I'm actually just happy to be a part of this, you know? Like if they want to mention me, like one example specifically was like, a long time ago, I was on that comment etiquette channel. It was like internet comment etiquette with Eric or something. something in that order. And that was a funny channel. I actually had watched him before, and at one point he used a clip from my man spreading video from way back then. I think this was like 2017. And
Yeah.
y- and yeah, he goofed on me, and I was just like, I commented on the video. I was like, "This is a good laugh." I said it was an honor, like making it to a show like that is funny. Like, no need to get defensive. It's just, it's good fun, and like, yeah, sometimes you could get defensive if another situation came up, and they're like, maybe like some channel is lying about you or saying you said something you didn't, calling you a racist, like whatever. But that wasn't the case. Like if it's a decent comic and they're just making a laugh, that's what happened there. They made that joke, and I was like totally fine with it. And then the same thing with Candace Owens, like she got a part of this bigger thing. They're on a bigger level, and it was fine. And it's because Chappelle's a high quality comic, one of the best, and it was just an interesting show to see. So I was very curious about that, and I thought that was fun. And I think it's a good way to wrap things up. So I'm going to go ahead and say bye to a few people, give you guys a few more comments, a few more minutes to comment something. What about before we go, Marcus? Was there any other stories we had a list of that we wanted to talk about today?
Apart from what we talked about today, I was thinking about talking about what was that one? Oh yeah, the who was the crying lady talking about the hats that were being issued to certain supporters?
I'm not sure about that one.
It was like the one lady. She was on TikTok and she was crying her heart out
Mm-hmm,
over
mm-hmm.
over an email.
Oh, yeah, I know that one. That was the TikTok video, and she saw like this Trump email, and she started crying because they said they were gonna wear MAGA hats, and they're like in the Trump army. And then she said, "Yeah, that was the most messed up one. That was so dumb because she was like fake crying on camera, and it was just so cringe. Because her point at the end made no sense. She's like, oh, they used to put these stars on these people back in World War II, and now it's the reverse of that. Now the Trump supporters are putting these red hats on, but you can't like really reverse that. Like it was just a total misrepresentation. Like I don't know, she was just trying so hard to make this whole comparison to Trump and this very bad person from World War II.
Yeah, it was when I first saw the video, I was like, "Oh boy, another bleeding heart." And then
Yeah,
when I watched the video itself, I'm like, "Oh my God, she's making the crying nurse look like she doesn't matter."
I know. It was definitely reminding me of that too. Like the crying nurse videos were popular then, and then now it's like everyone wants to make a crying video on TikTok. It's like, oh, that's their new angle. It's like, oh, if I just get the camera out when I'm crying, I'm gonna get everyone's likes and attention. But I think everyone's starting to see through that, and I think the chat knows that too. Let me say bye to a few people as we wrap things up. Sean Piper says, if you don't mind, plug my tiny little channel. That'd be awesome. Sure thing. Sean, thanks for watching. Make sure you guys check out his channel. Also, check out Marcus's channel. Marcus is joining me here as usual. You've got an Improser channel here. You do a lot of train related content and stuff like that.
Yep, I do a lot of rail fanning, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't really think about it in that aspect, but every train you see in that video, it's our economy in motion. That's probably
Mm-hmm.
the most conservative thing you'll ever see, apart from the trucks on the road, the freighters in the ocean, and the planes in our sky.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool stuff, and it's interesting to see the kind of it's just like a beauty to it, the construction and the rails, and they go across the country, and the fact that they go at such high speeds, and it's so safe and good for better for the environment, stuff like that is really cool. So that's Improser. That's Sean Piper, another fan. Everyone else, thanks for tuning in too. Kurt, I appreciate you watching. Nick, Richard, Charles says, "What about the Venmo a black person $10 white knight?" Yeah, I saw a story about that. I think that might have came out of that Chaz zone. They were saying all white people need to give black people $10, like straight up. And then the other thing I saw that I'll mention before we go about Chaz was there was like a new sign that was people were talking about at the Chaz zone. There was like a garden, and people already talked about how bad the gardens were because they just can't garden, and they have all these sorry looking plants that aren't going anywhere. And then in addition to that, like a day later, they put up a sign at the gardens that said these gardens are for people of color only. And it was basically like a sign that said no whites allowed. And it's just so funny because it's another example. Like we keep talking about how they're hypocrites and they're like, they act like all this stuff is bad, but then once they get their own town, they do all the stuff that they called racist before. Now,
Yeah, they're resegregating, only they're
yeah,
segregating against whites.
yeah, I know. They're resegregating, and it's like, okay, the first of all, I mean, you could defend some of those other things like the wall stuff and the Second Amendment stuff. That's not, there's nothing really racist about that. But this kind of thing, like segregation and telling people they can't use certain parts of your town, I mean, that's like actual racism, and they're all for it. And it's just like crazy. You know, it's like, I can't believe that they would like go for these kinds of really racist things that are obviously racist, and they're just, it's just insane. It's just a crazy story, and it keeps going. It's still going on, so we're going to get more of that soon. We're going to have more videos soon. We got lots going on here, guys, so you know. New videos on the main channel as always, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm trying to do extra videos for you guys. So I've been producing them quicker and getting more stuff out, and also putting videos on the second channel. The second channel has been growing really well. Like we were saying earlier, we're getting more viewers. We got up to 80 today, and we're doing this every Sunday. And then we're also getting more viewers on the videos on this channel. So lots of fun. Make sure you guys stay tuned. Make sure you're all liking, subscribing. You know the drill. Hit the bell button. Check out both channels. Thanks for watching today. You guys are amazing. I'll say bye to a few more people. Mestizo, Elizabeth, Nick. Thank you, Richard, for watching, and also White Wolf, Sean, Kurt. You guys are awesome. Thanks again to Marcus for joining me. You have a good one, buddy.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for watching, everybody.
Yes, thanks for watching. We're going to wrap things up. I'm going to say bye and get back to work on the next videos. You guys all have a good day.
Bye bye.